It is. Yeah, I don't know anything about racing. This is true. You're right. You're in the wrong show.
Yeah.
You're watching the wrong show if you want to hear like super engineer stuff.
Okay.
And honorable mention, Alpine, because hello, French Revolution.
Calito. Let's go, baby. I'm back.
I love that final drop
Back
from
and I
Moni is the
brought the
French
Reds with
Revolution.
me. I'm back and I brought the Reds with me. Oh, man.
Trust me, it's not trolling, Jack. Is purely laziness.
I love it. I love that. I love that Moni has that last drop. About the French Revolution when Ocon's engine can't even last the whole race.
We should crop Evan's face on Moni. That would be funny.
That'd be great.
We'll definitely get at one point. I will not be as lazy. Probably after football season, and we'll get an intro with Evan in there.
Yeah.
Sure. So
We're a
Daniel,
little focus on that stuff.
Yeah.
But hey, how you guys feeling, man?
I mean, how are you feel? I feel like we got to back away a little bit and give you the floor here for a second.
Yeah.
I was in Nashville while the race was taking place, but I got up on time, and I was able to. Let me not lie. I did not get up on time. I got up about midway through the race. I forget that there's an hour difference, so I got up.
Oh, man.
I got up at 8, but it really starts at 7. So I was like, crap. So I missed like a full 45 minutes of the race basically, and so I missed some of the fun stuff, but I caught some of the good stuff too, though, right? So it was exciting down down in the last 20 laps or so, where it was a 4-man show there, and uh, I was intrigued by the fact that the Red Bulls were completely out of it. They weren't even part of the discussion for the whole weekend basically, and
Yeah.
and so we'll probably get into that.
Yeah, I mean, it started. Liam Lawson knocked Max out of Q3, and then you're like, all right, what the hell's going on now? Because you just expect them to put a lap together, and just didn't.
Yeah.
That was wild, man. But listen, I was excited, and obviously, hell of a race by Carlos Sainz, of course, winning the whole thing. But I think the rest of the not the rest of the field, but the other three, it was kind of like the old McLaren team, man. Lando Norris pulling through. We appreciate it, and George Russell doing his very best not to win, which is always a plus around here.
George doing George things.
George, yeah, and I think
I mean, I was worried when he caught up to Lando, that he was gonna breeze past him, and then Carlos would defend, and George would just knock him out of the way and crash into him, the wipe, because when he's coming through, he's like my corner.
He's notorious for that shit.
Yeah, if he's in front, it's his corner. If he's behind, still his corner.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he is kind of following too closely to Lando, and Lando actually hit nicked the wall before he did.
Right.
And he followed him into the wall, but then he wasn't able to control it coming out of there, and he went straight.
And by the way, you got to give credit to a little bit, not as much as you give it to Lando, but even Leclerc did his thing for a little while, holding off George a little bit.
Yeah. We got to have a conversation about Leclerc and how he had the exact same strategy as Carlos and finished 21 seconds off the.
Yeah.
He almost lost. He barely held Max off. He shredded his. The one thing Carlos did that no one else really did was manage his tires well.
And he's been doing that lately too, so it's been pretty impressive.
So he still had life in them.
Yeah.
At the end there to defend.
Yeah. Right.
Those hard tires really worked pretty well towards the end of the race. With him and Lando both using them.
Yeah, but by the end of the race, Leclerc, who pit at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
he had shredded his hards, and Max caught him, which would have really been disappointing if Max finished fourth.
Yeah.
It would have been a distant fourth, but if he'd look who's fourth.
Yeah.
Look, obviously,
basically that's what Jack's always got the we'll talk about Yuki as well as Sergio Perez. Apparently think he can just drive through cars to take corners, but
that AlphaTauri team is going to look a little bit different next year. So,
well, I mean,
in every sense of the word, right?
I mean, Liam Lawson is he's doing his thing there.
He really is.
Qualified 10th. It was incredible.
Yeah, he qualified 10th.
We thought maybe, it's going to be another Nick DeVries, but no, he's a much better driver than Nick DeVries.
You kind of wonder how Nick DeVries ever ended up in that seat.
He deserves a seat, though. Liam, as of right now, it looks like
he has 2 points now. Puts him ahead of Logan Sargent, who's raced every race this year, and has not. And Nick DeVries, obviously, and Ricardo didn't actually get into a race.
Does it put him over? Does it put him over Lance Stroll yet, or no?
Oh boy, Lance! Dude, there's a lot of conversations that happen this week.
A lot of crap that happened, huh?
Yeah,
Lance is coming back this week, right?
No, he's out.
He's out again.
Is he?
I think so. I read somewhere that he was out again, but I'm not.
He might be out.
out.
I think they're gonna put Vettel. I think they're gonna put Vettel back in the seat.
Really, I hadn't seen that.
No, I'm just kidding. I don't know about that. But
I don't know who they would put in as the.
What's that Brazilian guy? What's his name? Isn't he a driver?
The reserve driver?
Yeah, the reserve driver, Drogovic or whatever.
Oh, that's right. Didn't he?
Oh, Felipe Drogovic.
Yeah, he raced in I think practice.
He did, yeah.
Yeah. So I think he would probably get the.
Did he win F2 a couple years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did, right? So
yeah, he might actually get. I mean, I can't imagine Lance is back, even though this rumor he's going to go play professional tennis or something.
Football if he wants.
Yeah, no, he can obviously stay as long as he wants because he owns the team. But
yeah.
So it's a crash in the race. Yeah, touche. That's
cause a red flag. So yeah, that is the his teammate is Fernando Alonso. So the intentional crash there can help him win maybe.
I want to get your takes, both of you, on the overall feeling of this whole this race itself. I mean, you had obviously a great showing by Ferrari. I mean, throughout the whole entire weekend, really. Their race pace was there in practice and qualifying, everything. And then the Mercedes looked pretty good too. Obviously, Russell shits the bed, but you still had a decent race by Lewis. And then you still had one of the McLarens in there that brought some updates. I think Piastri didn't bring the updates.
Yeah, only Norris had the updates, and Piastri actually got screwed in qualifying because
he did.
The lap times were dropping. You went from first to last to first once you set a time, and he was so he had dropped down to the drop zone, and he was on his flying lap when Stroll ended the session. So he got caught up in that and ended up out in Q1 because he wasn't able to finish his lap, which would have put him much higher up the field. But he still got some points.
Yeah, he still ended what? I think 6th or something like that.
Yeah, hold on. I'll pull up the results.
Yeah. Are you all impressed by what Ferrari did this weekend? Do you think that this is kind of a sign of better things to come for them for the rest of the year? Is it somewhere where they obviously still got some ground to make up in the constructors, but it's also kind of concerning at the same time, right? Because you're seeing. As of right now, to me, Carlos Sainz is having a better season than Leclerc is, and you thought it would be the other way around. And you're just seeing Carlos outperform Leclerc multiple times now. He sat on the pole, and he ended up winning the race. So that's pretty impressive from him. But I mean, the Ferrari looks good. What's your take on just not only Ferrari, but I guess what happened throughout the race itself?
Go ahead, Evan.
Well, I think, especially on a street course like Singapore, like Marina Bay, it's tough to make passes, even though this race did show that there could be some fighting, especially towards the end of the race. And even towards the middle end of the race with, who was it? Alonso and Ocon and who was else? I have it here. And Perez, when they were all battling right in the middle of the race, like it's still good fighting. But if you're in the lead, you're in the lead. Like it's hard to give up the lead on a track like that. You know, most of the overtaking opportunities are with DRS. But if you're in a trade, I mean, we saw especially towards the end of the race, you know how Carlos Sainz would back up and let Norris catch up to him just to get that DRS. You know, you need that DRS. And the advantage that Red Bull has had all year is that they're what 5, 10, 15 miles per hour faster than everybody else with that DRS, and that just wasn't there this week. They had no traction on the rear end. You know, the advantages that they had in aero probably got messed up by this new aero rule set that they brought in. You know, changing the flexibility range of the front wing and the rear wing, which could affect them with that stability that they had. And those cars the entire week was just every time that you heard Max or you heard Checo go on the radio, it was, man, this car feels like it feels bad, it feels it doesn't feel good. They obviously they had a little bit worse words in there than what I just used, but they were cursing that car all the way up and down the entire track. And when that happens, you have to take advantage of it, and Ferrari did, and Carlos Sainz did. And Carlos, it was his first smooth operator of the year. We all love that smooth operator whenever he goes in with it, and that's what he was this week. He killed it. He managed the tires properly. Ferrari did a great job at the pits, and at the end of the race, it was he had somebody that he felt comfortable with behind him, and he just went for it. And he said, you know what, I'm gonna drag Lando along, and Lando's gonna keep up with me because he's got nothing for this Ferrari, which he didn't, obviously. But he kept him up there with him enough that you stay in front of George Russell long enough, you frustrate him long enough, and you see what happens. And that's how a winning strategy for Ferrari this year is: get in the front in the beginning, stay in the front as long as you can. I mean, Suzuka is going to be a whole different animal, but for this type of course, for this type of circuit, they ran a perfect race. Really, they ran a perfect race. And if it wasn't for the fact that Leclerc, maybe he's just a little bit too aggressive, and maybe was just trying to push a little bit too hard, and then got himself taken by or passed by George Russell and then by Lewis Hamilton, it could have really been two Ferraris and a McLaren on podium. It should have been. But how about you, Vish? What do you think?
Yeah, I would say that we'll see if those aero regulation restrictions really are a thing for Red Bull or not in the coming races. Everyone seems consensus is that Singapore is a unique track.
It is.
When Mercedes was dominating every race, they'd come here and lay an egg too. So let's not all get too excited. But I will say the exciting thing for Ferrari is this is they've been Carlos has been putting it on pole. He's been qualifying at the front, and just like he put up a hell of a fight at Monza against those Red Bulls, even though he was way down on speed. He's just managing these races perfectly, and you saw that again here. And he conserved the tires. Leclerc did not. Leclerc was on a different strategy though, because he started on softs. And so then he got when the safety car came on, they had to double stack him. He fell down the order there, but he didn't do a good job conserving his tires. There was no life left in them, and neither did George Russell. When Evan, you called us out a few weeks ago in terms of his racecraft not being where it needs to be, and you could actually see that in real time because he and Hamilton pitted at the same time, and immediately he opened up like a 5-second lead on Hamilton. And Hamilton was just managing his tires. They even had like some of his radio messages like, I'm managing the tires. So when he catches the front, there's life in them.
Yeah.
And by the time George Russell caught Lando, those things were on the end too. Yeah. And so now so he just didn't have life in the tires because you saw how easily he got past Leclerc and how easily caught up. He pushed it too hard to get past Leclerc. He should have waited, taken his time, passed him on DRS, not tried to do it in the corner because you end up taking life out of your tires. He pushed it too hard. And by the end, like, frankly, Mercedes would have won this race if they told him to move out of the way and let Hamilton through. Because he was way fast.
You heard Hamilton say,
he
go
said,
faster.
Well, he's like, George used to go faster, but he couldn't because he had already ruined his tires. Yeah. And so it was almost like naive. Like, I'm going to race up to the front of the pack as quickly as I can is not the way to do that. Because when you get there, you still need tire life to overtake. And actually, if you listen to Hamilton's radio, when Russell crashes, he's like, "Oh crap, is this the last lap?" Like, yes. He's like, "Damn, I need another lap," because he would have passed both Norris and Sainz and won the race if he had another lap to do it in. And he's like, "Crap, I need another lap."
Yeah,
because they couldn't ask Russell to move.
Yeah,
but
especially not that late.
Yeah, not that late, and when he's right on, he's right on Norris. Like he was still faster than Norris, just not fast enough to overtake. But right when he crashed, Hamilton's like, "This race is mine." Oh crap, it's the last lap. so like I think a little bit more mature racing from Russell probably would have allowed him to win anyway. But yeah, Sainz putting Norris into the DR, and Sainz just. He controlled him right on the first stint. They're like, okay, you need to back up Leclerc into this window to hold back Russell. He does it. It was a masterclass in managing a race.
It was an un-Ferrari move.
He had to explain to the pit lane what he was doing. Like he's in DRS. He's like, I know it's on purpose.
Unbelievable. I mean, that's
Jack Daniels trying to take credit for Carlos.
Was it probably the oh, jeez.
He came of age in McLaren. So
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and then you saw it again this weekend, right? The two.
I mean, once they get sick of Leclerc, maybe they'll reunite in Ferrari.
I mean, listen. It's funny. I saw a meme the other day that showed Leclerc, I think, in a Williams uniform, so they say breaking news, he's joining Williams. Do you think that this is how it stays for a while? Or, you think Ferrari is content with the way that their team is set up now, where they still have the truth is Leclerc is a pretty damn good driver, but he has the same thing that and I hate to say it, some of the same issues that a guy like George Russell does, right? His racecraft, sometimes he's too aggressive. He shreds the tires and he makes dumb mistakes where had he not made those mistakes, he probably has a couple more podiums. He has a couple more wins under his belt. So you see the immaturity, yet he's been around for a little bit now. He's in one of the best, cars on the circuit, and you still see him making some boneheaded, moves. I know the Ferrari hasn't been great as far as race strategy and their team as a whole recently, but you still got one of the best machines out there. You should be doing a little bit better than he is. Are you all under the assumption that things could change soon in Ferrari, and not necessarily Carlos Sainz, but maybe Leclerc looking somewhere else? Although I know he's locked down for another couple of years, but I don't know if that really matters at this point.
I mean, I think the problem with Leclerc and Ferrari right now is it's hard for them to have everything line up for a race weekend. It's like one weekend their strategy would be good, but the drivers aren't as fast because the car isn't as fast. One week the drivers are fast, but then they mess up somewhere with the strategy. It's always something like that ends up happening that has held them back for a little while now. With Fred Vasseur there now, it seems like they're getting a little bit better. It seems like they're getting a little bit more, consistent when it comes to everything lining up all at once. You got to remember when Mercedes was the number one team for all those years, everything was right. They had the best driver, they had the best car, they had the best strategy. Red Bull the past couple of years, they have the best car, they have the best driver, and they have the best strategy. They're running 2.8 second pit stops or whatever it may be. Every single time something would happen with Ferrari, for the past few years with Tito Binotto, and now going into Fred Vasseur, it's like you have to have everything lined up for you to be for your dominant car and your dominant driver to have a dominant race. And that's what happened this week with Carlos Sainz, is that everything lined up with him. Now, again, like Vish was saying, Leclerc really had an issue with tearing up his tires, just like how George Russell did, and that really didn't have him stay up there with Carlos. But, Carlos being in front, clean air, everything like that, they were able to use that strategy that they actually played really well, and used it to his advantage and be able to stay out in the lead on this track where, like I said, it's pretty hard to pass here, especially when you have that clean air, you're in the front. You watch them go through the pit lane towards the end of the race when they had their last stop, and it was bang, bang, 1, 2, go. It was like it was orchestrated. It was beautiful. and you got Aston Martin go through and they can't get the rear tire off. So in this game of inches in Formula One, it's those little things that make the difference. And this week Ferrari had it. Let's see if they can use this as momentum moving forward and helping them out. Trying to keep that consistency going, trying to keep that that feeling of lining everything up. Because that's how you win in this sport. That's how you stay ahead in this sport, and that's how you dominate.
Yeah. Anything? You got anything on that, Vish?
Yeah, just the other thing is they managed the race really well. Like that whole thing drama at the end was because Ocon's car stopped and gave Mercedes a free pit stop, and they were going to do opposite of it. So if they had brought Sainz in, Mercedes was going to stay out. Like they were because the way it was going, they were not going to win, and there wasn't even like competitive. Like Sainz was in total control. So that actually spiced it up. And generally when that happens, Ferrari screws up, but they didn't do that here. And they held their nerve too, because they could have panic pitted or tried something, and they just no, they held their nerve, even though like the computer data was showing that they were going to lose. They stuck to it, and they were right. And had they put Sainz in on that safety car, I guarantee the Mercedes stays out.
Yeah,
they were going to do the opposite. That is the one advantage to being in behind. You can see what the car in front does and do the opposite of what they do, because because Mercedes need to break that up, because otherwise they were just following Sainz around and watching him win the race. So, but yeah, it was very well controlled. It starts with qualifying, though. He put it on pole. I mean, Leclerc got out qualified by George Russell, which is another reason they had to put the softs on him. They did sacrifice him a bit. They put the softs on him knowing it was not the optimal strategy, but it allowed him to jump Russell right off the start and hold him back. Now, a lot of that work ended up being wasted because they all pitted at the same time under the first safety car.
Right.
But that was again Ferrari playing the big game. Like, we need to win this race. We need this win, and we're going to put both drivers into it. And, Leclerc, if you wanted to be the lead driver, you need to qualify in front of him, and you didn't do that. And so I think that was a maturity from Ferrari we haven't seen. In terms of Leclerc overall, I think until Ferrari has a car that they feel is consistently capable of winning races, it's not there yet. It's getting closer because they've been, like we said, they've been qualifying really well.
Right.
It's the first time they capitalized on it. Once that happens, if they see Leclerc continue to fall back, I think that's when he gets more focused. Right now, it's more just, the advantage of having a car that's good but not great is you can show pace, but there's not really expectations.
Right.
Once they start, this might be, coming into next year, if Sainz keeps winning races and finishing top 3 and then Leclerc isn't, then it'll be like, okay, you're now costing us the Constructors' Championship. We need you up there, that kind of stuff. It's not that level yet. So.
Yeah, because at this point, Leclerc could still win a race, or he could still be, he could still do it. And because you're not seeing necessarily him, kind of fall back below the top 10 and not be competitive. I just think it's a matter of, from a team perspective, you want to be the number one driver, you got to show a little bit more, and hopefully he does, because I think that he's a pretty special driver. So we'll see. Let's look at the standings real quick here. Obviously, it's still Max, and then
everybody else.
Yeah, that doesn't really matter. But you're seeing the frog. Yeah, you see the Ferraris creep up a little bit with Carlos Sainz getting close to Fernando Alonso. Obviously, the Aston Martin has kind of disappeared a little bit now. So I fully expect Carlos Sainz and even maybe Leclerc to pass Fernando Alonso. I think Lewis Hamilton is having a really, really solid year considering their Mercedes start. I think that he's looking real good there. And if Sergio doesn't watch out, Lewis may take his ass too. So.
I mean, so Sergio banked all the. Remember, he was leading the championship after 5 rounds, and he banked all of those points. Like, the biggest gap in point distribution is first to second.
Right. Everything else.
And so he's just riding the wave of winning 3 races. It's like a quarter of his points right now. Like, he is not good. And by the way, this performance this weekend, he should have been black and white flagged. Like, what he did to Albon is absolutely ridiculous. It's like you're playing a video game and just push the guy out of the way. I cannot believe that was egregiously bad. Because after he took out Yuki, to to start the race, like right in the first lap, he just wipes him out, like hits him. But what he did to Albon, he literally just like Albon's taking the corner like on the Norway slide. He just goes in and pushes him out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
It was like there wasn't even a move to make there. Like I don't know, and Albon rightfully was like, I mean, I've been avoiding cussing, so I'm not going to. But it's like this guy, like what is he doing? And we've actually talked about how Perez is getting, and he said desperate, and that's exactly what he is. He's falling behind. He knows that car is better than he's showing,
right?
And I think he's probably thinking
he's also
about
feeling
to
the
get
pressure from his team, right? Obviously.
Yeah, no, I think he's going to get fired, and I think he knows it. Like Ricardo is in the team again. You got Liam Lawson putting up strong performances. Like that's 2 drivers you're probably going to want in Red Bull / AlphaTauri next year already. And and maybe Yuki gets chopped, or maybe
Could you see Liam Lawson getting put up to Red Bull?
I don't think so, not yet.
Yeah,
I think you'd get a year in AlphaTauri. I could see Ricardo though.
Well, I mean, what the question would be is whether they want Ricardo to be the number 1 at AlphaTauri and have Yuki there as the number 2, and then you could have Liam Lawson be the number 2, the definite number 2 in Red Bull. Because if you put Ricardo in that seat, it might just be a whole nother Sergio Perez, situation where he's gonna want to win races. He's gonna want to be up there, past Max. But Liam Lawson
I don't know that they're necessarily worried about that because I don't think they can beat Max.
Yeah,
and they'll fix the strategies anyway. Look what happens, which they've done to they did to Checo like once or twice, but no, Checo's just been bad.
Yeah.
Like everyone, no, they were like, because obviously Max like missed Q3, and I forget what the number was, but it was like more than half of the last like 10 races Checo had missed Q. Because it was like, oh my God, there's a Red Bull out in Q2. I was like, Checo does that routinely now.
Yeah, I remember.
Like, he has been bad.
Yeah,
and so, I mean, that's where the scrutiny is. And obviously it's going to be hard to make that gap up so he doesn't finish second, just because, again, you'd have to win some races, which maybe they can do now. Like Ferrari's shown they can. Mercedes is right there with them at the end. So maybe there's some more race wins, but like his performance has been terrible really after like the first 5 or 6 races. And that is a premium car to have that performance in. And he is definitely desperate. He's knocking people out of the way, trying to score points. He's knocking poor Albon off the courts. What are you doing, man?
My hot take for 2024 is Lance Stroll goes to become a professional pickleball player, and Checo gets a seat next to Alonso at Aston Martin.
Oh, that's interesting. I wonder what they would do with that second seat.
He'd go back to Racing Point.
Yeah. We go back to the team. Lance Stroll bought the team and Lawrence Stroll. He bought the team and fired him. So
exactly,
that would be funny if you went.
Welcome back, my friend.
Yeah, welcome back, my friend. I mean,
have to paint the cars pink again.
If you had told me that like Alonso would go back to McLaren after his first stint there, I would have said crazy, but he did. He cost them a championship. He cost Hamilton a championship by being a jerk because he was getting beat by him, so he'd block him. That one race where they were trying to. This is different qualifying rules, but they were trying to do quick pit stops to get out and do another qualifying lap, and he waited in the pits and blocked the pit box so Hamilton couldn't pit. And yet they brought him back. So Checo to Aston Martin can happen. As Jack says, as we look to the constructors, Red Bull can actually clinch the constructors in Suzuka. Not exactly a suspenseful thing. They've more than doubled up Mercedes, who's in second.
Yeah. I think that's all but done. There is the gap between Mercedes and Ferrari is interesting.
That is very
24
very
points.
Cool. If you look at the going back to the drivers, it's because it's because of
Russell.
Our man here is closer to Norris than he is to Leclerc. And keeping in mind, the McLaren, like for the first 5-6 races, was so bad. Remember the first race
going in reverse.
They hit every like 2 or 3 laps to top the hydraulic fluid off. That car has caught up to George Russell.
Unbelievable.
Like he could pass it too.
Yeah, that might happen.
Yeah,
that might happen.
If George Russell doesn't know the George Russell thing this week, Lando might have a strong week at Suzuki. He always does pretty good over there, If he's up there.
You know, everybody's been talking about, you know, this might be a whole nother animal. I mean, I know we all expect probably the Red Bull to kind of get back on, you know, back on the
Honda power.
yeah, on the horse and do its thing here. But this is still another race where some other teams could potentially be pretty competitive. Also, I think I fully expect Ferrari to continue its its competitiveness. You know, you still got some chances here for them to perform well, and the Mercedes as well, and McLaren. So you've got still those top four teams that are looking like they can do some damage here. With it's 53 laps, so it's a little bit of um, a longer circuit. You've got 5.8 kilometers. And it looks like it's about a minute 30. So, 130 by Lewis Hamilton in 2021, if I can read that right.
2019.
2019.
Yeah, sorry, it was a little smaller. And so this is an interesting race. I think this is going to be a fun one. I know that
one DRS zone is it on this one.
That's it. Yep. Which is right there in between. God,
yeah, it's a start finish straight.
Start finish line.
Is that where it is? Okay.
Yep.
I gotta look at that a little bit bigger. Yeah, there we go. All right. Yeah, so you guys talked about how this could be a little bit different now. Using the C1 to C3 for the tire compound for this race. Is this a race where you can see anybody challenging Red Bull at any moment, at any point?
I mean, realistically, this is their home race. I mean, we all like to say Max's home race is Zandvoort. Maybe Red Bull Ring is the home race for there, but them and AlphaTauri are the only two teams running Honda engines, and those Honda engines don't lose in Japan. This is one of those tracks that they've dominated for years. Even in the Mercedes days, they were still right up there with them. Because at the end of the day, just like how Ferrari likes to do good in Monza, Honda cars like to show out really good in Japan. I will say though, this will be an interesting race tire wise because they will be having an extra set of medium tires going into the race. So strategies might play out a little different. They're doing testing or Pirelli's doing testing on a new C2 tire for next year. So every team will have an extra allocation of tires for the race weekend, which could play out with different strategies. Obviously with going into the qualifying. I'm not sure. Are they doing the new qualifying format for this week? If they're not, then
No.
they don't
The
have to
sprint
use
shootout,
that.
you're talking about the sprint?
No, where they have to use the hard, the medium, and then the soft for Q1, Q2, Q3. I haven't heard anything about that this week, so I don't think that they're going to. But either way, you have that extra set of medium tires. We saw what those mediums could do in Singapore with George and Lewis going into it. Or going into that last stint. So it could be a interesting. It could be an interesting race in that aspect. There could be a lot more strategy. This is an old track. It was built in 1987, as you saw in the last graphic. This is another one of those famous tracks that Formula One goes to, and that everybody knows. The spoon curve at the end, the dagger curves. Right in the beginning of the lap. Like this is an iconic track. And at the end of the day, those Red Bulls and AlphaTauris are going to show out. Maybe AlphaTauri in the midfield and Red Bull, at the front. But that's the way I see it. I don't see them dropping another race for the rest of the year. I really don't.
Fair enough.
Yeah, well, I think this circuit will be interesting to see the effects of the crackdown on flexible wings and floors, not just on Red Bull, but on everyone. Because Singapore is not one that's really would highlight that. This will. It's a lot of fast corners and a weaving track that is gonna test whether or not how much of an impact that had. The other thing, Evan, you were mentioning the kind of the historic nature of the track. It's also the only track that crosses itself. It's a figure eight here, so it's a little bit of an interesting track to watch if we manage to, as you can see, the timings, wake up and watch it because Jesus.
I'll be watching it at the restaurant.
Get into it.
Yeah. Evan's at work during that, so he can
Yep.
just.
I'll have it
put
on.
it on the TVs, and he's good.
Yeah, he's good to go.
I'll have sound and everything.
I will see. I'll be in Philly on Saturday watching the Canes play, so I'll be back in DC by the time this comes around on 1 a.m. on Sunday morning. But
1 a.m. race on Sunday morning, man.
I don't know. It's supposed to be like 60 degrees and raining in Philly, so I might just like. I'll see what condition I'm in after that game, but yeah, we'll see. But yeah, no, I think it'll be interesting to see how everything else kind of shakes out, because those rule changes affected everyone. It wasn't just Red Bull. It was targeted at Red Bull, just like when Mercedes started dominating. They changed like ride height and all that stuff to target what they do well, but it doesn't just impact them.
Right.
And so just like when Ferrari got busted with the illegal engines, they dropped back, but then Haas and Alfa Romeo ended up all the way at the back because it affects everyone. So like this is one of those things where it'll be interesting to get a gauge on where everyone's at. And at this point, probably not that much more car development is going to happen this year. The season's kind of over. You start working on the next year's car, so this will probably be, what we're looking at. So to Evan's point, if Red Bull comes back here and like restores order, they're probably going to walk the rest of the season, to be honest. But they again in qualifying, Ferrari's been right there with them a lot of the time. It's really just been in the race pace, but with only the one DRS zone, maybe this is less of an advantage for them.
Yeah, I mean that is a possibility. Another couple quick little points about this race that we're going into, if you guys don't mind. We do have Oscar Piastri that got the new contract. I don't know if you guys saw that. He's signed now through 2028, I believe. So, I think after this last race where he did start, towards the back of the pack and then brought his way back up, or got his way up into the top 10, they're seeing this as more positive. And same thing with Liam Lawson. We're all loving what he's doing in that AlphaTauri, but this will be his last race because he's got to get back to Super Formula that he's racing in Japan, where he will be finishing out the year at Suzuka. So he's going to do this race in Formula One and then go back there in a different car and finish out his year there. He's in second place in that series. So, if he ends up doing, as good as he is, I don't see why he's not going to get a Formula One seat next year.
Yeah, there's no way. So I mean, will Ricardo be ready by then?
Ricardo was set to come back at the next race. That's what his target was. That's what his target is to come back by the next race.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so the fact that Liam Lawson has to get back into that Super Formula seat, it's like if he's not ready to go, they're going to have to get him ready.
Yeah, they're going to have to find somebody else. So let's get into the exciting stuff. Weather looks like it's gonna.
Well, weather's always a factor in Japan. It's been a factor there for years.
Yeah, you got some rain, but it doesn't look like it's gonna have too much rain this weekend. Got about 20% chance of rain as of right now, so that's not too bad.
Yeah,
all depends. The weather looks to be kind of warm, but okay. Who are your drivers to watch, guys? Who do you got? I was gonna say Lando. Evan,
I got Lando. There you go.
Yeah, Lando. Evan, who are your drivers to watch? And team.
I mean, realistically, like I said, we all know the Red Bulls are, at least we all assume the Red Bulls are going to do good. I really want to see how Ferrari does. If they are going to be able to stay up there with them. They have a fast car. They have, they seem like they got a good strategy from, this past weekend. Let's see how they come into this weekend and if they're able to keep that momentum going, because realistically they have a car that can stay up there with them as long as they like I said earlier, hit all three parts of the race. The drivers are doing good, the cars fast, and they have the great strategy. So Ferrari is really somebody that I'm looking at. But at the end of the day, also McLaren, I think if Lando can get out on qualifying pretty well, then he has a fast car as well. And Oscar Piastri, if he doesn't have the situation like what happened last week in Singapore, those are two cars that have shown already in the past few weeks that they are capable of staying up there with them. Maybe not competing for the race win per se, but at least being up there in the top 5, podium spots. So Ferrari and McLaren really, I want to see how they come into this weekend and how they perform throughout the weekend. Because at the end of the day, I just feel like a Red Bull is going to come in with a bone to pick after the showing that they had in Singapore and just dominate. I mean, it's going to be the Miami Heat after they lost the first 6 games with LeBron, Bosch, and Wade or whatever it was, and they just destroyed the league the rest of the year that year.
Listen, I don't think we'll be comparing Red Bull to the Heat. All right, that's just,
hey, 2 championships in a row. I mean,
I guess so, man. I guess so. Look at Vicious' face when you mentioned that.
Well, I mean, I remember the first series they played the finals together.
Yeah, the first one.
Well, the first and the fourth.
Yeah. He's happy about the first one.
Yeah,
he doesn't care much about the fourth one.
Yeah.
Anyways,
forecasting a podium. We'll get the predictions in a second.
Yeah, what do you got, Vish?
Just to add to what Evan said, the Alpines have been going through a really rough patch reliability wise. So I'm looking at them, and then driver, can Yuki complete a lap? It's been 2 races. Remember, his car stalled in Monza on the formation lap, and then Perez knocked him out on the first lap this race. So he's not completed a lap yet, and it's his home race. So and might be his last. And as Evan, as Jack said, rumors abound that he might be on the way out. So this might be his last chance to race at home.
Yeah, he's been struggling quite a bit. He started off
well. I mean, the last 2 races were not him. I mean, the car stalled on the formation, and Perez just wiped him out. Like, I mean, I don't know what he could have done about that.
Maybe they could just leave him there in Japan.
If you're between Checo and the position he wants to be in, he will take you out to get there. So. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of on the same boat with Ferrari. I want to see if they can continue to do their thing in Suzuka this weekend and stay competitive and really give Red Bull a run for their money a little bit. I think obviously they still have to contend with Mercedes as well, but I think right now the way that Carlos Sainz is driving, and even Leclerc to some extent, I think they could really be competitive this weekend. But as far as the driver, it's funny because I was kind of thinking about this a little bit, but I want to see, how much more weight they're going to put on Fernando Alonso's shoulders over at Aston Martin, because obviously it looks like Stroll is going to be out for the race, and you might have Drogovic or somebody else in that seat. But you've seen them steadily decline throughout the season now. At least the last 5 or 6 races, you've kind of seen a significant drop in Aston Martin. And quite frankly, I know we make the joke that that's what happens when you copy the Red Bull, and now you can't keep updating it like they do. So
yeah.
But look, Alonso's still a hell of a driver. Can he kind of get into the top 10 again and be competitive a little bit?
So apparently Stroll is going to race. That's
really?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, their chief, whose name sounds like Bart Simpson calling Mose, was Mike Crack. Confirmed that he was racing. That's his actual name. I mean,
it's his real nice.
Crack is his name. So. So Stroll will be racing, but that's not going to help them get any points. So your point still holds up because it's all on Alonso to capture anything.
All on Alonso again.
Yeah.
Maybe Mike Crack sucks. Or Mike Crack.
Mike Crack
stinks.
I had to.
It stinks.
Mike Crack's boss is the problem here, because the boss's son. It's like the boss brought his idiot son to work and stuck him in a car.
I thought it was.
How do I do this?
I thought it was Mike Crack. Bro,
he forgot to take your kid to work day is only 1 day a year. It's only 1 day a year.
Yeah, this is what happens when you take them every day. You're
exactly.
You can't get any work done. Oh man. All right, so let's get into the fun stuff, man. We're gonna start off with Vish on predictions.
I mean, I'm very disappointed. I could have said George Russell DNF, and I didn't. And then that man delivered in catastrophic fashion.
Yeah, he did.
So I'm gonna put it down this time for surprise George Russell DNF. And then top 3, I think Carlos will win again. Second Max, and then third Hamilton.
All right.
I'm riding the Carlitos train.
Riding the Carlito train.
Excellent.
The smooth operator.
What do you got, Evan? What do you got?
I mean, like I've said the whole show, I think that Red Bull's going to dominate. I'm going with Max, at the front. I think he's going to be up there in qualifying. He's going to stay up there. I do think that Lando's going to have a good showing. Obviously everybody knows I'm a McLaren fan, but he's shown that he can have that pace, especially in a track like this where there isn't multiple DRS zones. There's only that one. If he can get out ahead of Checo, if he can get out ahead of the Ferraris, he has shown that he can stay up there with Max and fight with him. So I'm going to go with Max first, Lando second, and Checo third. Just because, like I said, I think that those Red Bulls are going to be fast, and I can see Lando and Checo interchanging, at any given time in that race. Those two I think are going to be the fight of the race somewhere, towards the end.
What's your surprise?
My surprise, I'm going to go with Yuki. I want to see Yuki top 10. He hasn't finished the last two races. This is his home race. He wants to show out. We all know this. I'm calling it. I'm saying Yuki's going to be top 10.
Okay.
Jack in the chat's got Max, Carlos, and then Hamilton.
I got him there. I think that this time around, I think you're going to get I'm going to do it. I'm going to hop on the bandwagon, sort of, right? I'm still saying Max gets back on, on the win streak and he takes the podium. But I'm going to go this time around. I'm going to go Leclerc in P2 and Sainz in P3. So I'm going to say a 2-3 for Ferrari there. I like Lando also. I think Lando ends up in fourth or fifth with one of the Mercedes somewhere in there also. But I'm going to say that my surprise is going to be Lawson qualifies top 5.
Oh, that's interesting.
Wow, I would have taken top 10. I would have taken top 10 as legitimately. Went all the way top 5.
I'm going to go top 5.
Damn.
Well, listen, bro. Evan's been talking up, AlphaTauri this whole entire show. I was like, I got to put him in there somewhere as a surprise, It might work out. You never know.
And especially because he's got experience at this track now. The Super Formula season, they only race in Japan. They have, the I think 6 or 7 tracks that they use. They've already raced at Suzuka once this year, and those cars are about 7/10 of an F1 car. They're a little bit faster than an F2 car. They're not quite as fast as an F1 car, but having that experience racing at that track already once in a very competitive series, because the Super Formula is super competitive. It's going to play to his advantage. Maybe that is a possibility, that he could be up there in qualifying and even in the race,
I think it's going to be fun. To watch, man.
At 1 a.m.
If you're watching, make sure you send a tweet.
He's blaming Rosberg, which is always a good strategy. So
get Rosberg over there again. Make sure you guys.
Wait, hold on. Evan's sister coming off the top rope. Lee here.
Carly came in.
Wow,
and you're just gonna come on strong like that and give us
heavy on the Red Bulls.
Hey, look, she's backing up my prediction. Like I said, Perez and Norris could
sort of
interchange.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Are you guys getting together talking about this before the show?
Actually, funny enough, to be honest with you, me and my sister talk after every single show. We discuss our things about the races and what's going into the next one. So we always have a post show kind of conversation about it. No collusion. Just me and it's funny. I've told you guys before. I've been into Formula One, for most of my life. She recently just got into Formula One. She got into it with
she
the
knows
show.
more than me already, though. That's for sure.
Well, she got into it with the show with the Netflix show. So.
I thought she got into it with our show. I was like, all right, yeah, of course she got into it with our show.
Yeah,
I mean,
so she got into it with that, and she got into it pretty heavy. So,
that's cool.
It's something that me and her share passion about. We talk about every single week. We always talk to you. I call her on a Sunday, and the first thing she yells at me is, "Don't tell me what happened in the race. Don't tell me. I don't want to know," because she watches it on replay. So.
That's cool, man. Shout out to Carly. That's awesome. We appreciate it for sure. Yeah, look, if you guys see something during the race at 1:00 in the morning, please tag us on Twitter at F1_Fine_Breezes.
Yeah, I can tell you if I'm awake, it will not be in the.
Can we do a late night?
Oh god, late nights with Alex coming back.
Twitter talk or whatever it was called.
Whatever was the
Twitter Spaces.
Spaces with You see if that Kenyan guy shows up again.
We're gonna get Alex back on the show.
Yeah.
And Fernie's out there working like they're actually doing stuff right now. So
Fernie was on the on Six Rings on Monday.
Yeah. Okay.
Was he?
Cool. Well,
asking where Jazz was.
Yeah, Jazz was on the way back home, man. Yep. What a weekend! That was fun though. That show was fun. All right, check us out. We'll be back on next Wednesday at about 9 p.m. and keep it locked on the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. Check us out, and we'll see you guys next week. Adios.